Now that you have Ruby installed, we can start writing our first program. But before you do that, you're actually going to need a text editor. Of course, there are many text editors available, but the one I'm going to use in this course is called Atom. It's a free text editor by GitHub. Of course, choose any text editor you like. It doesn't have any bearing on the kinds of work that you'll be doing in this course. To install Atom, visit atom.io in your browser and click Download for Mac. Follow the installation steps and you'll have your text editor up and running. Once you've downloaded Atom, we're going to create our first project. Once again, in your terminal, I'd like you to make a new directory using the mkdir command. We'll learn more about what these commands mean later, but for now, just copy it. Let's call our directory project. Hit enter at the end of the line, and now we can enter that folder by typing cd project. If we type ls, we can see that there are no files inside. So now what I'm going to do is open the newly created folder inside Atom. Simply go to File and Open, and choose the folder we just created. In programming, it's very common for the first program we write in any language to be called Hello World. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's type in the command puts, and using the quote symbol, which is just above the question mark, enter Hello World. It doesn't look like much yet. We can go File and Save As now, and let's call it hello.rb. The .rb file extension indicates that this is a Ruby file. And click Save. Switch back to your terminal. Now we can run our program. Let's type Ruby, indicating that we're going to run a Ruby program, and hello.rb. Hello world. So what's actually happening here? Well, we've used our first keyword, puts. In fact, puts is what's known as a method. And puts takes anything inside the quotes and prints it to the screen. We'll use puts a lot in this coming course. You can also read input. So to read input, we use gets. But when we read input, we need to know what that input was. So we actually have to assign that to what's known as a variable. In this case, we're going to assign what we're reading in from input with gets to a variable called value. Don't worry if you don't understand this yet, we'll be trying it out ourselves. So here we can see a slightly more useful program. It's still not particularly valuable, but we've got a few important concepts here that we're using. Firstly, we're printing something to the screen. You can see here we're printing, what is your name? Then, using our gets command to read input in, we're asking the user what their name is, and then assigning it to a variable called name. Then finally, on the third line, we're printing that value back to the screen using the puts command. Let's type this code into our text editor and run it and see what happens. Now we can run our program in the same way that we did before. We'll type ruby hello.rb. Now you can see the program is asking for my name. Well, my name is Dan. I'll type that in and hit enter, and it simply printed it back to the screen. Like I said, not super useful yet. The puts method actually has an evil twin, print. You can use print in much the same way as puts. In fact, I'll just change my puts command to say print. Why don't you go ahead and try this and tell me what is the difference between puts and print? Those astute students may realize that the difference between puts and print is quite subtle. Let's try it in our command line. If I run my program again, now that I've made those changes, type ruby hello.rb. What is your name? Dan. Did you spot the difference? The difference is that print does not append a new line at the end of each print. If we compare this to our previous version, running Ruby, notice now that the cursor is on the new line. When we printed, we didn't get that new line character. I can type in my name, and I've ended back where I started. So there's a subtle but important difference between print and puts. Okay, One of the common misconceptions about programming is that it's all highly mathematical and analytical. Well, actually, it's very important to understand language when we're talking about programming. We're going to introduce a new word called interpolation. Interpolation is a word that stems from mathematics, but in the programming sense, it allows us to do some really cool stuff. Have a look at the following code. I've just assigned Dan to a variable called name. I'm then calling puts, and I'm using this hash or pound symbol character and some curly braces and putting the name variable inside it. This is an important principle that allows us to include variables that we've already established inside our output. Let's see how this code works. I'm going to assign a variable called name to be Dan. I'm going to use my puts method again. And this time I'm going to use the pound symbol and include name. This is called interpolation. Save my program. And now I'm going to run it again with ruby hello.rb. And you can see that the interpolation has actually included the variable inside my output. So I'm going to give you an exercise now. I'd like you to modify the program we just wrote to include interpolation to ensure that when you capture your name, you're also printing the name out.